Hi, welcome to my show, Math, Science, and Ethical Living in Manhattan. In Queens, it's Prosper through Sane Economics. And in Brooklyn, it's Ethical Social Networking. So I'd like to see all the citizens united behind economic justice. Economic justice. Giving everyone a fair opportunity to live a decent life. Not only in America, but throughout the world. And to do this, very simple idea is to have an adjustment in income. Most of the income is going to the top 10%. Top 1% is getting 23% of all the income. So Robert Reich, in this book, Aftershock, promotes this idea for U.S. workers who work full-time. They will get $600 billion. Where from? From the top 5% of high-income earners. And that will be shifted to the bottom 95% for those who work full-time. I don't agree with that idea. I think that is too much money to give to full-time workers. I still agree with the idea of shifting $600 billion from the top 5% of high-income earners, but half of it is enough to go to the full-time workers, and the other half should go to the poor, sick, and needy. Now, with $100 billion every year, we can build 1 million single-room occupancies, decent rooms for people who are homeless. That's 1 million every year. $100 billion a year. And with the other $200 billion, we can do a lot. We can build, my idea is a vision to have 10 new cities built on the Great Plains or elsewhere, maybe near the Great Lakes, to get the water for the cities. So right now, our wind energy is at maximum capacity. There are 10 companies. That's why I chose 10 cities. Each company can duplicate what they're doing. I was told by once a leader of one of those companies that it would cost $2 billion to duplicate all the, like to vertically integrate, to do everything. Some companies are horizontally integrated. They don't make all the parts for the windmills or generators. But okay, it would take $2 billion. Let's say it took $5 billion. That means it would take $50 billion of the $300 billion to duplicate the companies one time. And the next year they could start duplicating a second time. And before you know it, in 10 years, we could have all our electricity from the Great Plains and build all the infrastructures needed to deliver that electricity. We can get rid of coal, which makes half of our electricity, but it requires an enormous investment. And the money is there in the pockets of those who have high income. And they're not going to feel it that much. They'll be doing a good deed to re-educate, retrain the workers. And not only the workers who are unemployed, but the prisoners who are nonviolent could move to these 10 cities that could be located somewhere in America wherever they have enough water. And each year, if you divide, I estimate it would cost $100,000 for a room, more than a room, but with a bathroom and kitchen, and another $100,000 for paying the people, another $100 to build the infrastructure. So with $300,000 divided into $300 billion, that's 1 million people every year. In 10 years, you're going to have 10 million people being trained in the solar future, trained in all the skills, not only to make wind energy, but to make all other types of renewable energy, and to learn how to make houses more efficient. So the homeless can be trained, the nonviolent prisoners can be trained, and the unemployed can be trained, as well as students. And this could be a wonderful public works project like they had in the past during the tough years of the Depression in the 1930s. Public works project to build cities of the future that will be making our renewable energy needs to fulfill, to replace coal, oil, and natural gas. But it requires a huge investment, and the money is in the income. But that's only one issue. Income, tax, on the people who earn more than $160,000 a year, roughly. And I have another idea, besides not to even take a penny away, to build these cities. But another idea is to mandate that the top 5%, even up to 10%, weatherize their homes so heat doesn't leak out in the winter or leak in the summer. Retrofitting homes. There's over 70 million single-family homes that have to be retrofit. So the people who have the money ought to do it, and they would eventually get their money back. In 5 years, or 10 years, even 15 years is a reasonable investment to get your money back from the investment of weatherizing the home. And in addition, those in the top 5–10% should solarize their homes, put solar cells to make electricity from the sunlight, to make hot water from the sunlight, to make heat from the sunlight. And then we could develop a hydrogen economy, and the homes can have fuel cells that would take the hydrogen into the fuel cell and make pure water and electricity when the sun's not shining. And the rich got huge grounds. They could put in pipes 10 to 12 feet down and connect these pipes to a heat pump They can make heat in the winter and cool in the summer. From the difference in temperature, it's about 10 to 12 feet down, it's always around 50 or 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So in the summer, the heat, when it gets 80, 90 degrees, the difference in temperature can make cool. In the winter, 50 degrees, 40 degrees, and 0 degrees Fahrenheit, you can make heat from a heat pump. And according to Stephen Chu, our Secretary of Energy, this is currently viable to do. So this money that's going to be mandated, in other words, on the top 5% there would be about $300 billion. On the top 10% it would be $500 billion. Like, imagine what you could do every year. And then all the other homes that need weatherization, on those who have less resources to invest, but the rich can invest in these other homes to weatherize them and share in the energy savings. 50-50, or they can maybe get 70-30 they might like return for their investment and energy savings. And then in addition to solarizing, geothermalizing, hydrogen fuel cells, battery storage of electricity, or send it back to the grid and get payment for that. In addition to that, the excess funds, this enormous amount of money, from the top 5%, $300 billion a year, from the top 10%, $500 billion a year, from a 10% pre-tax on their income, without taking a penny away. And the excess money from the enormous incomes of some should go to invest in small, renewable, solar energy type businesses. And they might make a fortune by investing wisely. They're speculating wildly now. That brought us into this past current ongoing recession. So those are two ideas. Robert Reich's idea is to shift income through taxes, raising taxes on the top 5%, to shift this money to the bottom 95%, but I say only half, and the other half to build cities that are renewable energy based. These cities every year, you can start out with 10 cities of 100,000 each. Next year you can double that, 100,000 every year in 10 cities. So in 10 years you'd have 10 million people, 1 million in every city. People who need jobs, students, prisoners, and the unemployed and the homeless, all could be being educated in how to build the future type cities from scratch. So that's my vision. Okay, so at least Robert Reich's idea, if you don't like my vision, makes sense, except to give half to the full-time workers and the other half to the poor, sick, and needy by building these cities. Okay, that's on income. But then we have pollution. When you don't want something, we don't want pollution, especially pollution that could destroy so much of this world by raising the water of the oceans 20 feet, 30 feet, even more. Talk about 20 meters, 60 feet. We don't want that. So we got to tax carbon products, which are coal, oil, and natural gas. We've got to tax them out of existence. And by taxing them, then the renewable energy the solar energy will become extremely more competitive than the fossil fuels that are currently destroying our ecosystem. Now, Robert Reich, part of his program, wants to get another $210 billion the first year by a tax on a $35 tax on a metric ton of carbon dioxide, which would bring in $210 billion the first year. He wants to give it to various programs. But James Hansen, who was the director, the head of the NASA Goddard Space Center, and also a professor at Columbia, he wants to share it equally among all the citizens. So if you divide 300 million into $210 billion from the first year tax, everybody would get $700. And the students, instead of getting, there are 53 million students from K to 12, K to 12, which is about from what, grade from 5 to age 17 or 18. There are 53 million students. Each one of them could get a laptop computer the first year with high-end programs inside from Microsoft. And that is from a carbon tax. And in 4 years, the tax will be raised. So Robert Reich, who was Secretary of Labor under Bill Clinton and is currently a professor of public policy at the University of California, Berkeley, wants to, he says, when the tax is raised to $115 a metric ton of carbon dioxide from the burning of fossil fuels, the amount of money we'll have from that tax in 4 years will be $600 billion. If you divide that by 300 million Americans, you would get each person getting $2,000 per person. So a family of 4 would be getting $8,000 in the 4th year. And renewable energy will be much more competitive, so we can leave the coal in the ground, which is extremely dangerous. It spews out mercury, leaves behind an ash, which turns into a sludge that last year escaped in one area and destroyed the water tables. But you're eating fish. And where did the mercury come from in the fish? From the coal companies spewing out their waste, in addition to the carbon dioxide. And then we're also breathing in this stuff. It's in the ash. Okay, so we can get rid of coal. We can make all our electricity from the wind power on the Great Plains. There's any 4 states of the 5 that can make all the electricity we need. If we would just increase the, there are 10 companies making the wind power, so we got to increase them, make them duplicate themselves, then reduplicate themselves until we can have enough wind energy to supply all our electricity. It's doable if we invest the money, and the money's there. And that's only from income. So there's 2 types of income, ways of handling income. One is to tax it, and the other is to mandate it. And the mandating part will be to fix up the homes and invest in renewable energy small businesses and all kinds of products for the wealthy. Okay, that's on income. Now I talked about our carbon tax. Oh, you don't want something, you tax it out of existence. That's what we should do with pollution. And the worst pollution right now is the carbon dioxide that is going to destroy the planet in many different ways. Okay, and the third issue on economic justice is wealth. We can have a wealth tax. When Reagan got into office, our national debt was under $1 trillion. You can look all this up in the World Almanac. The figures are there. When he left office, the national debt was almost $3 trillion. So he increased it almost by $2 trillion, the national debt. And if you look up the Survey of Consumer Finances, which every 3 years, they survey how the wealth is distributed in this country, who has how much. Well, in those years under Reagan, I don't have the exact figures in my head. I looked it up a long time ago, so I have to re-look it up again to get more exact. But the $2 trillion that increased our national debt under Reagan, the rich increased their wealth. They were able to by over $2 trillion, my memory. But even more recently, I have the exact figures, which I could show you. From 97, or 98 I should say, to 2007, 9 years, the top 10% of high-income earners, families, earned $21 trillion. Or if you divide by 9, that's $2.33 trillion every year on average for 9 years. If they only earned $1.33 trillion, okay, for those 9 years, that means they could have paid off our national debt in 2007, which was $9 trillion. You know, $1 trillion a year for 9 years is $9 trillion, and they still would have had $1.33 trillion in their pockets. To put it in more concrete terms, I have a sign that I made, which I can pull it out maybe. Here's a sign about the wealth. And it's hard to understand in terms of aggregates. What does $2.33 trillion mean every year? Here's what it means. It means that the top 1% gained a net gain for each family a year. They gained almost $1 million every year for 9 years. And the next 9% gained $150,000 a year for 9 years, which is almost $1 million over those 9 years. Money they put in their pocket, in other words. Or if we just take the average of those two, it's $200,000 a year for the top 10%. Every year for 9 years, that's $1.8 million per family on average. But the bottom 90%, whatever they gained, which is very little, they gained $7,000 a year for 9 years. That's $63,000 over 9 years, $64,000. They lost it all in 2008. And currently, almost 2012 now, they've lost it all. They were at $18.4 trillion, about 90%. Now they're less than $12 trillion. The same they had in 1998. They had about 12 trillion. Now they got less than 12 trillion because all their value what they increased their wealth was in their homes, which has lost about 30% of its value. So, okay, talk about wealth. So I give you some perspective on the rich every year can easily, they've been gaining over $2 trillion every year until the recession came. Okay, so my idea is they could have paid off the debt under Reagan. They hadn't, I don't know exactly what they gained, I have to look it up, but I'm very sure what they gained from 98 to 2007. They could have paid the debt off, $9 trillion, we'd be not being in debt, you know, if they paid the debt off. And they still would have made $1.33 trillion every year for 9 years, even paying off the debt. Instead, they made $2.33 trillion. Okay, so now they got about, they went from about $46 trillion. Currently, the figures won't be out till about March of 2000. Okay, you got to wind up. I got 3 minutes to wind up, or 4 minutes to wind up. Okay. Then I'm going to continue the show with Manhattan, and then I divide it into 2 parts for Brooklyn and 2 parts. I only have a half hour in Brooklyn, and only a half hour in Queens, and an hour in Manhattan, which I'll divide into 2 parts. Okay. So if you want to contact me, dkseed@gmail.com, and get an email back automatically on Robert Reich's ideas that I've modified. I give you his ideas and I give you the modification. You can send an email to at least 10 of your contacts, willing to do likewise, for economic justice. And if you want to help with my TV show, I'm looking for a soulmate. I'm looking for people to collaborate with. So if you're a parent, student, teacher, or the public, and you want to improve the curriculum in math and science and ethics, or you want a TV show, become a co-host, or I'd like to have a student come on the show and me educate that student for free, and therefore parents can see how to do it. So write me at dkc@gmail.com, and you'll get back automatically a leaflet on Robert Reich's idea, and also my idea on mandating, as well as taxing, without taking a penny away. You can write my box number, box 2866, New York, 10163, 10163. And we got about 2 minutes more. So what can I show you of value? We should learn to create a 1-10-100 citizen network for economic justice. That's extremely important. These are my interests that I just put up. So write me at dkseed@gmail.com, and we get back a leaflet that you can send to your friends. Let's mobilize for economic justice. Let's unite for $300 or $500 billion yearly for solar energy. Okay.